Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So this will have many advantages. So that is why we are sort of preparing ground for all that. Finally, we are going to apply all this to holomorphic functions. Okay. So now the theorem, important theorem about existence of radius of convergence, which I mentioned earlier. So take a power series summation ai z minus z naught to the power I goes from 1 to infinity, and let r be equal to 1 upon lim sup of the ith root of mod ai. Then the power series converges absolutely if mod of z minus z naught is less than r, and diverges if mod z minus z naught is bigger than r. Yeah, so a very neat expression for the radius of convergence. Okay, the proof is really, I mean, the proof in some sense we have already proved the theorem. This is the immediate consequence of the root test. So apply root test. So the series converges absolutely at a complex number z if lim sup of mod ai. So now what is the series? The series is summation ai z minus z naught to the power I. So the first term of the series is a1 z minus z naught, second term is a2 z minus z naught square, third is a3 z minus z naught cube. So that is the series for which we have to apply the root test, not summation ai. Now our series is summation ai z minus z naught to the power I. So if you apply the root test, what does the root test say? The series converges absolutely at a complex number z if lim sup of, you should take the ith root of ai z minus z naught to the power I, right? But what is ith root of ai z minus z naught to the power I? It is ith root of mod ai into z minus z naught, modulus of z minus z naught. So this should be less than 1. This was the root test. Yes, just direct application of the root test. So this series converges absolutely at a complex number z if lim sup mod lim sup mod ai raised to 1 by I times mod of z minus z naught, this is less than 1. That is the same as saying mod of z minus z naught is less than 1 upon lim sup of mod ai, ith root of mod ai. And similarly, it diverges for the same reason. It diverges if mod z minus z naught is bigger than 1 upon lim sup. Yeah, anybody any doubts? Yeah, so let us maybe go back to root test for a minute in case you have forgot. So this was the root test for a series summation ai. Take lim sup of mod ai raised to 1 by I. Then if this is less than 1, it converges absolutely. If it's more than 1, it diverges. This is what we are using. But now instead of summation ai, we have summation ai z minus z naught to the power I. So I'm just blindly applying the root test to this series.
Sir, what will be the difference if we use supremum instead of limbs?
Difference meaning, see, I mean, see, first of all, limit may not even exist, right? Limit existing is different from lim sup, the lim sup existing. So if you have, I mean, you just, I mean, you just don't get it. I mean, because the Cauchy's root test says you have to take lim sup. I mean, many cases the series is convergent and then the two are the same, but in general,
are they same or?
No, that's what we saw many examples, right, where they are not same, where one of them may not even exist, limit may not even exist. I mean, this is what I emphasized earlier on. If you take the series alternately 1 minus 1, 1 minus 1, and so on, that has no limit. It has a lim sup. It has a lim sup which is 1.
I'm saying instead of lim sup, can we directly put supremum?
No, I mean supremum of, see, no. See, remember, the series converging or not converging at a complex number, you can always ignore finitely many terms. Finitely many terms don't make any difference, right? But if you're only interested in taking supremum and not lim sup, then the supremum is sensitive to the first few terms as well. So you're not going to get the right answer. Finally, the whatever formula you have should not depend on you should be able to ignore finitely many terms of the series and still get the same expression for the radius of convergence. Your formula should not be sensitive to finitely many terms. If you're only going to take supremum, then it will matter. Then every term in the series will matter. Yeah. So anyway, this is a very straightforward consequence of the root test. So let's move on. And similarly, if limit of mod ai plus 1 by ai exists, then just like above, you can apply the root test instead of you can apply the ratio test instead of the root test and conclude that r is equal to limit I tends to infinity mod of ai by ai plus 1. So this is the argument is completely analogous. So I will not just again straightforward application of a ratio test instead of a root test gives you that the radius of convergence is limit of mod ai by ai plus 1. This is assuming that this limit mod ai plus 1 by ai exists, then the radius of convergence is ai by ai plus 1, modulus of that and limit.
Sir?
Yeah.
Shouldn't R be equal to, in the second case, shouldn't R be equal to 1 by lim sup of I tends to infinity mod of AI plus 1 by AI?
See, I'm assuming that my limit exists. Once limit exists, limit is same as lim sup.
Exists, but the limit does not for the ratio test. So if the lim sup exists and that is less than 1, then also the sequence is convergent, but we cannot define the R this way then.
Oh, sorry, could you please say that once again? Yeah, if the limit exists, so if the limit does not exist but lim sup exists.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And it is less than 1.
Yeah.
Then also the sequence is convergent, right?
Yeah.
But how do we define the R in that case? Because the limit is not existing.
Yeah, so I cannot. I can only use it in this special case when this limit exists. You'll have to use the root test. So that is exactly my next comment. See, okay, so let's come to the next remark. If a series converges by the ratio test, then it converges by the root test as well, but not conversely. So thus the root test is actually better than the ratio test, but the ratio test is often easier to use whenever it succeeds. So in fact, we have this inequality lim sup of mod ai to the 1 by I is less than or equal to lim sup of mod ai plus 1 by ai. So if the limit of these ratios ai plus 1 by ai exists, then this lim sup will exist, and this lim sup of mod ai to the 1 by I is actually less than that. So it's a stronger test.
Sir, isn't the ratio test better than the root test?
No, I mean, if you can conclude that you want something to be less than 1. In the ratio test, you have some smaller number, so there is more chance that the smaller number will be less than 1, right?
Sir, like it's written here, if a series converges by the ratio test, then it also converges by the root test.
That means the root test is stronger, right?
That means ratio test is stronger, right?
No. That means root test is stronger.
Ratio test implies root test.
If ratio test works, then root test will also work. But there are occasions where root test will work, but ratio test will not work. So the root test is stronger.
So if any one test works, it's enough.
Yeah. But root test is the stronger. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So let's see some examples so that everything will become more clear, hopefully. So let's take the first example. So summation z raised to I upon I. It should be I goes from 1 to infinity, not n. Doesn't matter. So let's apply the root test. Let's apply ratio test. As I said, when both the tests are going to work, then it's better to apply ratio test. So what is limit of mod ai upon ai plus 1? This is limit of I plus 1 upon I, and we know that limit of I plus 1 upon I as I tends to infinity is equal to 1. Hence the radius of convergence is 1. Yeah, so very simple example. Second example related to the first, let's take the series summation z raised to I by I factorial. We will see maybe in the next lecture itself or sometime that this is actually the second example. This is the power series expansion of the exponential function e raised to z. E raised to z will be equal to summation z raised to I by I factorial. Okay. And so of course, you know, you would expect it to converge everywhere, right? Because exponential function is defined everywhere. And that's indeed the case. So again, let us apply a ratio test. So what is limit of mod ai by ai plus 1? So this will be simply limit of I as I tends to infinity, which is equal to infinity. Hence, the series converges everywhere. The radius of convergence is infinite, and so the series converges everywhere.
Sir, what is I factorial?
What is?
I factorial means
That I
please.
is not the imaginary number I, right? It's the term I.
Okay,
No,
is it
no. It is, so instead of summations, I have written n equal to 1 to infinity. I really mean I goes from 1 to infinity. This
okay,
I is
okay,
varying over the integers. This is not the complex number I.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a typo. N should be replaced by I. You know, such minor typos might be there a few places, but you know, I suppose they are minor enough that they don't come in the way of understanding. Okay. So third example, let's take z minus z cube by 3 plus z to the 5 by 5, etc. So here radius of convergence is again 1. Both the tests apply. Now let us try to apply the root test instead of ratio test. So then R, we know, is equal to 1 upon lim sup of mod ai to the power ith root of mod ai. So that means 1 upon lim sup of ith root of 1 upon 2i plus 1, which is equal to 1, we know, because ith root of 2i plus 1 tends to 1 as I tends to infinity, right? Ith root of 2i plus 1 tends to 1 as I tends to infinity. I suppose people know this. I mean, ith root of 2i plus 1 is like ith root of I. It will converge to the same basically. You can take the 2 out, then it is ith root of 2 times ith root of I plus half. Ith root of 2 will go to 1. Ith root of 1 I plus half is going to converge to the same as ith root of I. Ith root of I will converge to 1 as I tends to infinity. So this limit is going to be 1. Yeah, any doubts about this? Let me look at the chat box for a minute. Yeah. Yeah, example 3 is also clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's go to example 4. So this is half plus 1 by 3 z plus half square z square plus 1 by 3 square z cube. Next term will be half cube z4 plus 1/3 cube z5 and so on. Okay, so this is my series. Half 1 by 3, then half square 1 by 3 square, then half cube 1 by 3 cube and so on. Now I'll leave one little checking to you. Check that in this case the ratio test fails. It's a matter of computing limits. All of you can do it very well. Check that the ratio test fails. And let's apply a root test to show that the radius of convergence is 1 by root 2. Okay. So I'll begin with the elementary observation. So first observe that if xn is a sequence of real numbers, then lim sup of xn is the maximum of lim sup of x to n and the lim sup of x to n plus 1. So I can break up my sequence into the even terms and the odd terms, take the lim sup of both of them, and then take the maximum of the two numbers. You agree with this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is simply saying that if I want to take maximum of all elements in the set, I can break up the set into two parts, take the maximum of both those subsets, and then take maximum of those two. That is the same as maximum of the full set. So just applying that, lim sup of xn is the maximum of lim sup of x to n and lim sup of x to n plus 1. So applying this to the above series, we get lim sup of mod ai, ith root of mod ai. This is maximum of lim sup of, I separate into even and odd terms. So what are the odd terms looking like? Odd terms are like 1 upon 2 raised to I plus 1 by 2. So 1. And similarly, the other term is 1 by 3 raised to I by 2. So it's maximum of lim sup of I plus half raised to I plus 1 by 2 ith root and lim sup of 1/3 raised to I by 2 ith root. Yeah, simply because the odd terms are half raised to I plus 1 by 2. The even terms are 1 by 3 raised 1/3 raised to I by 2. Yeah, so we just have to compute the maximum of these two lim sups. But again, once again, see, as is usually the case, both the limits actually exist. So lim sup is the same as the limit. So where will ith root of 1 by 2 raised to I plus 1 by 2 converge? So for example, yeah, so that is the same as half raised to I plus 1 upon 2i, right? Ith root of half raised to I plus 1 by 2 is the same as 1 by 2 raised to I plus 1 upon 2i. I plus 1 upon 2i will converge to half. So this will converge to half raised to half. So which means 1 upon root 2. Similarly, the other one will converge to 1 upon root 3. And the maximum of the 2 is 1 by root 2.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Yeah. Everyone agrees?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So these are 4 examples, and of course there will be more examples in the tutorials. Okay. So now let us see. Yeah. So as I remarked right in the beginning, the course subject is quite theoretical. So it takes a while to discuss the theory, then come with few examples. Then again there will be a fair bit of theory and so on. So it's a very conceptual subject. And okay, so now power series. So power series can be added, subtracted, and multiplied in the obvious way. They can also be differentiated and integrated term by term in the domain of convergence. Indeed, suppose I have fz equal to summation ai z minus z naught to the I, then limit, let's compute what you get, limit of f of z plus h minus fz upon h. Let's compute this. Let's compute the derivative. So that means limit of f of z plus h minus fz upon h. So this is summation an limit h tends to infinity, limit h tends to 0, z minus z naught plus h raised to n minus z minus z naught to the n upon h. So this is the same as we know what this limit is, limit of z minus z naught plus h raised to n minus z naught to the power n upon h. Just apply the binomial theorem and you know that this will be n an z minus z naught to the power n minus 1. Yeah, so so this is going to be the derivative. This series is going to represent the derivative. Yeah, and again, if you apply the root test, you can check that a given power series and its differentiated series and the integrated series all have the same radius of convergence. So this new series summation n an z minus z naught to the power n minus 1, just check using root test that it has the same radius of convergence as fz. Yeah, this is kind of obvious because when you apply the root test, you will have this what extra term do you get? Basically, you will get nth root of n. Yeah, because it's almost like the original series, except that there is a multiplication factor by n, and that nth root of n goes to 1 as n tends to infinity. So if you just apply a root test, it's immediately clear that the radius of convergence does not change. So this is for the differentiated series. Similarly for the integrated series.
Sir, in this case, won't the root test fail if the original series itself is not following the root test? It's convergent, but it's not following the root test.
Sure. So therefore, that is why I said in its domain of convergence. That means the root test is working. It is in the domain of convergence. So at whatever points the original power series converges, at the same points this differentiated one also converges. Okay, now let us just easy application of root test. Okay, now analytic functions. A function f from omega to c, omega will always denote an open subset of c. So a function, otherwise I'll have to keep writing let omega inside c be open, etc. Whenever I write omega, it always means I'm talking about open subset of c. So function f from omega to c is said to be analytic if it is locally given by a convergent power series. That means every z0 in omega has a neighborhood contained in omega such that there exists a power series centered at z0 which converges to fz for all z in that neighborhood. So analytic functions are those functions which can locally be expanded into a convergent power series around any point. So analytic functions are infinitely differentiable. You only have to differentiate the power series term by term. That is what we just saw. That term by term differentiation gives you the power series for the differentiated function. And also if fz is given by summation ai z minus z0 to the I, then you know how to compute ai. That is something we saw right in the beginning. This is the ith derivative at z0 upon I factorial. Thus, once you know the power series, you know the function. But if you know the function, you also know its power series because you know all the coefficients. It can be computed in terms of the function. ai is equal to ith derivative at z0 upon I factorial. So the function and its power series expansion carry the same amount of information. So thus an analytic function is given by its Taylor series. So we will prove later that holomorphic implies analytic. This is the core reason why we are discussing all this, that holomorphic functions are also analytic. Yeah. So this will follow from a very beautiful theorem of Cauchy that we will come to. A very basic theorem on which much of the later complex analysis rests. Yeah. And therefore, once we prove this, then we would have also proved something which I stated in lecture 1, that once differentiable is always differentiable in complex analysis. Once a function is holomorphic, that means once differentiable, it is given by its power series. Once it's given by its power series, it is analytic. That means it is analytic, and analytic functions are infinitely differentiable by whatever I've just written. So holomorphic, yeah. So here one functions which are once differentiable are infinitely differentiable. All this is yet to come, but just to put our discussion in proper perspective. Yeah, is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I want to discuss a sharp contrast between complex analysis and real analysis. Something which people have asked me in the lectures before. How similar is MA 205 with MA 105? So I said they are very different. Here is one way in which they are very different. So just as in the complex case, power series and analytic functions can also be defined in the real case. Yeah, you can take a real power series and so on. But unlike in the complex case, differentiable does not mean analytic, real analytic. In fact, even infinitely differentiable does not mean real analytic. Just for the same reason as before, if it was real analytic, it would be infinitely differentiable because you can term by term differentiate the series and it will be infinitely differentiable. So real analytic certainly means infinitely differentiable, but even infinitely differentiable does not mean real analytic. So in the real case, first of all, differentiable does not mean infinitely differentiable, and infinitely differentiable moreover does not mean real analytic. So I want to discuss this example. This is a very important example from in analysis. So I want to. So what am I discussing? I want to now discuss an example of a function from R to R, function defined on the real axis, which is infinitely differentiable, but it is not defined by its power series. It means it is not real analytic. And the function is define fx to be equal to e raised to minus 1 by x if x is bigger than 0 and 0 if x is less than or equal to 0. Yeah, is the function clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So in this, I'll explain this calculation. In this example, all the derivatives of the function at 0 are 0. And thus the Taylor series of f is the 0 function. If all derivatives are 0, then all the coefficients ai will also be 0. Ai is the ith derivative at 0 upon I factorial. So this is the example where all derivatives at 0 are 0, and therefore the function is not defined by its Taylor series. The function is not identically 0, but if you try to expand this around 0, if you try to expand this around 0 in a power series, convergent power series, that power series is forced to be 0. Okay, so here is a, yeah, so this is how the graph looks. For x less than 0, it is 0. Then it starts increasing and sort of it increases at a rate which is infinitely slow at 0. It increases at a very slow rate at 0. And so this is a sort of how the graph looks. This is one handwritten page which I added at the end. Yeah, everyone can see the page, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is so even before talking about infinite differentiability, let us first check that the function is continuous at 0. So as x tends to 0 from the right, e raised to 1 by x tends to infinity, right? 1, because as x tends to 0 from the right, 1 upon x tends to plus infinity, and then e raised to 1 by x will tend to infinity, and hence e raised to minus 1 by x will tend to 0. So the right limit is 0, the left limit is anyway 0 because the function is identically 0. So left limit equals right limit equals the value of the function at 0. So continuity is not a problem. Let us check differentiability. Everybody agrees with continuity?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Now let's check differentiability. So let's compute d by dx of fx at x equal to 0. So what is this? This is limit as h tends to 0 from the right. I should compute limit from the right and check that it is equal to 0. The limit from the left is going to be 0 anyway. So this limit as h tends to 0 from the positive side, e raised to minus 1 by h minus 0 upon h, limit as h tends to 0. So this is limit of 1 upon h e raised to 1 by h tends to 0. But as h tends to 0, e raised to 1 by h tends to infinity faster than h tends to 0. Yeah, you all know this from M8 105, I'm sure, that exponential functions increase faster than polynomial functions. So if you take this h e raised to 1 upon h, as h tends to 0, the first guy is h is tending to 0, but e raised to 1 by h is tending to infinity. But e raised to 1 by h tends to infinity faster than h tends to 0. Right? You can, if you like, if you make a change of variables, define h prime to be equal to 1 upon h, and then this is limit of e raised to h prime. So this is the limit of h prime upon e raised to h prime, and limit as h prime tends to infinity. So h prime upon e raised to h prime goes to infinity, this limit will be equal to 0. Because e raised to h prime will increase much faster than h prime. Everybody agrees?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this limit is equal to 0, and hence the function is differentiable at 0. There is no real issue of checking differentiability at other points. The only point at which some checking has to be done is at 0. and we have just checked that this limit exists, and so it's differentiable at 0. And similarly, for the same reason, all the higher derivatives will also exist, because instead of h, you will get some higher powers of h, but exponential function is going to increase faster than any polynomial. So for exactly the same reason, all the higher derivatives will also exist. So this is a very curious function. All derivatives, the function is not identically 0 in a neighborhood of 0, but all its derivatives are 0. So the function is sort of increasing infinitely slow. It's increasing at 0, but infinitely slow. So I'm saying this is what happens in real analysis, and the whole point of complex analysis, what I wanted to emphasize in this in the slide before this, is that in complex analysis there are no such examples. In complex analysis, once the function is just once differentiable, it is automatically infinitely differentiable, and it is given by a convergent power series. So this is how, situation is dramatically different in complex analysis. Yeah, this example is really to illustrate the sharp contrast between real and complex differentiable functions.
Sir, how will its complex analog work in complex analysis? This function's complex analog.
Well, there's no real analog. The whole point is that there is no analog, right?
Okay, so like instead of x, if we substitute z, like it will, the differentiability will be different.
No, but here I'm talking about x less than 0 and x bigger than 0. That does not make sense in complex analysis. You have the full plane. So this example cannot be quite modified to complex analysis.
But it can, right? Because instead of a line, we'll be taking a circle.
What is the function that you are defining?
The same function, 1 e power minus 1 by z and 0.
For z what?
For mod z greater than mod z greater than or equal to 0.
And 0 when mod z is less than 0. And 0 when z is less than
okay, so it will be equal to 0.
Yeah,
okay,
those functions are equal to 0.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's all I want to say. I will stop the recording.